Are you looking to get more out of your throw and become a better disc golfer? In this podcast with Holyn Handley, we do just that. We learn how a player who just picked up disc golf only 3 years ago has become one of the best players in the FPO field. We learn about form, we learn how to improve our distance, and we're going to learn so much more on this episode. Make sure you stay tuned through the end, and you might even get some mental tips that will help your disc golf game when things are going poorly. Let's get Holland on the podcast right now.
What's up, guys? I'm Holyn Handley, sponsored by Dynamic Discs, and you're listening to the Chain Clankers podcast.
Alrighty, everyone, super excited to have Holland on the show with us. One of the furthest throwers in the game. I think we're going to learn a ton in this episode. Holland, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Well, I am doing fantastic. Quentin, how are you doing? I cannot wait to get this going here. Thanks for coming on, Holland. Really looking forward to chit-chatting with you.
I personally am doing okay. I'm glad to be here. Super excited to learn. Financially and sports gambling wise, doing absolutely horrible right now. It's been a very bad night. We're recording this on Thursday Night Football. Packers, Titans. I took the no score first possession. Of course, there was a touchdown and then 5 straight 3 and out. So absolutely good stuff. But we're not here to talk about sports betting. We are here to talk about Holland and learn more about her disc golf journey. Holland, so start me off. Where was the first time that you ever kind of ran into disc golf? How did you find disc golf?
So I first encountered disc golf about 3 years ago. My boyfriend actually found some video online. And suggested, we go grab ourselves some starter packs and check it out because it looked like a fun way to get outside and, something to do together. I just found the sport about 3 years ago.
Okay, hold on. Can we bring this
do
back
that math.
Just half a second. 3 years ago, and you're, let's see here, number 13 in the standings on UDisc Live?
Something like that.
Oh my gosh!
Wow.
Talk to me about how did that happen? How did you go from someone who's just kind of getting into disc golf? And if my math checks out, that's probably right before COVID, right around the time COVID started, right?
Yeah, so it would have been like October of 2019 was when we first went and tried. We just went to like a little 9-hole up in Irvine, California. And we were horrible. At the beginning. I have a video from the day. It's pretty great, actually. But it was the kind of thing where we just like the flight of the disc, man. We found ourselves wanting to go back out every weekend. It became kind of the thing that we did. Saturday and Sunday, we would drive about 30-45 minutes to go play a course. And then we found out there were tournaments. We found out there was this whole community doing stuff. And so I actually competed in my first amateur tournament the weekend before COVID hit. So then we were all, we played this tournament. We were so gung-ho about playing all these tournaments when the summer came around, and then COVID hit and everything was shut down. We couldn't even go to courses in California initially because of how strict everything was. And so, we kind of started making up holes and stuff at our like local parks, local fields, started practicing a little bit more. And then that summer I just kind of decided I want to learn how to throw further. I've been watching coverage at this point, and I wanted to figure out how to throw like the people that were on Jomez. And so I started looking at videos of my own form, and I just like dove and got super, super deep into it. And then, next thing I knew, I was just dying to play a tournament. So January 2021 rolls around. I still can't play any tournaments in California, so I drove all the way to Arizona, about a 6-hour drive, I want to say. To play this B tier called the Maricopa Open. And I ended up, Jennifer Allen was there, Katrina Allen was there. It was the first time playing with like touring pros. And I was like 895 rated at the time, and I ended up taking it down. So it's kind of this like nobody player just came out of nowhere and took down this B tier. That got attention from, potential sponsors, and everyone I got interviewed on Smashbox, and everyone was like, oh, what are you going to do? Are you going to tour? Are you going to do all this stuff? and like didn't have plans to tour at that point. Played just a few tour events just to kind of see what it was like in 2021. And then at the end of 2021, we were wanting to move back to Texas. I'm from Texas originally. We were wanting to move back to Texas, and so I was at this weird crossroads of like trying to look for a job, but I've been really into disc golf. I played a bunch of tournaments at this point. I'd won a couple of A tiers at this point, and I just wasn't into the job search at all. So I actually reached out to my sponsor and was like, hey, if I just like went on tour, what would y'all give me? And they immediately upped their offer. They were all about it. We already had a truck. I got a trailer. And we just decided I'm going to do this for a year. We'll see how it goes. Actually had a pretty good season. And so now I'm gearing up for year number 2.
Wow. That was a
very long-winded
I
answer.
apologize. I feel like I should know this, but that was awesome. That is probably the quickest I've ever heard someone say. Because, I mean, I think I've been playing longer than you, and I'm maybe 892 rated, and you're over here just crushing. Winning B tiers on like, okay, was that like 6 months, 7 months, 8 months after you first started when you won that B tier in Arizona?
It was a year. It was a full year.
Still, that is
months, yeah.
That's impressive. So, walk me through kind of like to get to that point. You said you guys were making, courses up in your local fields or at local parks. Like, what was your goal and kind of how did you get there? And I mean, that fast is very rare, I think, but what was your goal and what were you working on like when you first fell in love to get to that point where you were taking down B tiers and A tiers and all these tournaments that quickly?
Yeah, I mean, the weird thing is I didn't really have a huge goal. When I decided I'm going to go to the field every other day or whatever and spend 30 minutes working on form, like my only goal was I just wanted to throw better. Like at that time I was I was able to throw like maybe 280 if I got it on a good line, but I was like, I feel like if I really, put some time in, I could be throwing 350 or, something bigger than that. So really the goal was to just throw better. I had no aspirations to be like the local pro or to hop on tour or anything like that. I just wanted to like get to the next kind of level. And then once I got a little bit better at throwing backhand, I was like, okay, well, I want to get a little bit better at putting. And so I started putting every day for half an hour. So it was really just like kind of put my head down and was like executing this practice process every week. And then I kind of looked up and had gotten a lot better and was like, cool, let's go do a B tier. And then kind of surprised myself and everybody by like winning it. And then it was kind of just back to like, okay, well, let's just go back to trying to get better. Like it was never I want to win an elite series or I want to be a world champion. It was just like, I want to get better than I am right now.
I think that's a fantastic mindset to have. We talked a little bit on our last episode with Anthony from Happy with Par about, you could be too competitive too early on and you could actually derail your disc golf game. And so it's really interesting to hear you say that you went out to the field and practiced and worked on your form and then started working on putting for 30 minutes a day. If I'm hearing you correctly, to build those good habits and to actually really see your game improve, you have to do it in the field. You're not going to elevate your game quickly by doing it on the course. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah, totally, because when you're on the course, right, you're thinking about how do I get a birdie on this hole, right? You're thinking about what do I need to aim at and like how does the disc need to fly? You can't be thinking about that and then also thinking about like how do I keep my arm, away from my body or how my reach back point or what are my feet doing? You can't think and focus about all of those things at one time, like actively. So the nice thing about going to a field or even throwing into a net or even doing disc drills without a disc at all, what that does is it lets you kind of zero in on one little thing at a time, and so you can kind of like take a little chunk, maybe just like footwork or even one specific part of footwork, and just like get that right, and then move on to another little chunk, and then start to piece them together, and then start bringing a disc into play. Like you're actually, by going this route that feels like super slow and super mundane, it's actually the fastest way to get better.
Walk us through the process of exactly what you were doing to, focus on really hammering out your form and getting better with your process that you used.
Yeah, it's great because I'm actually in that process right now because it's November and I don't play again until February. So I think step one is you can just video yourself from the back, from the side. and find, like, look at it in slow motion, look at it frame by frame, and find the problem spots, right? Find the issues with, you know, whether it be your positioning, your footwork, your reach back, like, are you rounding, are you dipping, like, whatever it is, you know, find the thing that you want to improve. And then, you know, either you can look at, like, what other pros look like when they throw, and kind of compare yourself, or you can find there's tons of good resources on YouTube, tons of good channels with lots of different ideas for how to correct certain things. But pick one thing to focus on, and you kind of have to have the mindset of, like, I don't care how long it takes, I'm going to focus on this one thing until I get it. And then I'll usually start with a drill that doesn't involve a disc. So, like, if I'm working on footwork, or if I'm working on positional work, take the disc out of it so you can focus on what your body's doing. And so progress through those drills. And once you've mastered that, you can start kind of throwing into a net. I like throwing into the net next, just because you aren't distracted by what's the disc is doing. You can still focus on what is your body doing. And throughout this entire process, you got to have that video camera for feedback, because there's kind of a separation between what feels right and what looks right. And so once that what feels right, what looks right starts to coincide, then you go to the field and you start throwing there. And again, you try to get everything to look right, feel right, and fly right. Now you're ready to go to a course.
So let me just backtrack. So it's better almost to just throw into a net to really work on your form, instead of being worried about the flight of the disc. How do you know when it's right to go from throwing into the net into putting it all together in the field still and seeing what the flight of your disc is? Like is the flight of your disc really ever, I don't know, influencing you? Like is that what determines a good or bad outcome in your shot? Or is it, okay, I hit this certain thing in my form right, even though the throw and the flight wasn't good, this is still a positive rep? Like, how do you reconcile that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So if you take the example of, like, if you're trying to get rid of rounding, right, there's a lot of reasons why people round, but maybe you're trying to reach back wider. That's something that I actually worked on, was reaching back wider. If I change my reach back point, my throws are going to be worse than they were a second ago when I was reaching back the way I wanted. Even though I'm rounding and I'm doing all of these things form-wise that are incorrect, while I'm trying to figure out that one little thing, I'm going to temporarily throw worse. So that's why I say throw into a net, remove that distraction. And so when you get to the second part of your question, which is when are you ready to go from the net into the field, it's when you are able to do the thing you're trying to do automatically without having to think very hard about it, right? So the way you determine this is, all right, I'm going to throw into the net right now. I'm thinking about the thing I want to change, and then I go and I look at my video of it. Is it what I wanted to see? If the look of it and the feel of it were both correct, now you go back, you try to throw again without thinking about it. Now, once you're able to repeatedly do the thing you want to do without having to think about it, and it looks correct on video, you're ready to go throw in a field.
So the question that I was going to ask is, are you throwing these reps at full 100% game speed, or are you lightening how hard you're throwing them since you're just throwing into a net?
Yeah, I'm definitely not throwing full speed, because it's really hard to go against your ingrained habits if you're going full speed. So I would recommend going, like, even as slow as you need to go to start to get the positions that you're trying to get. So if we go back to that case of, like, rounding, go as slow as you need to so that you are not rounding, and then you gradually speed it up.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I actually kind of latched on to one thing you said about reach back, because I'm thinking about my reach back all the time, and I always feel like I'm a little bit off. You said reach back wider. It sounds pretty self-explanatory, but could you kind of give me a little bit more detail about what you mean when you say reach back wider? Because I know I am focusing on that, and I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to this that are wondering how their reach back should look.
Yeah, so I mean, an ideal reach back, right, if I draw a line from my left shoulder to my right shoulder, and then I draw another line from my right shoulder to my right elbow, that first line and that second line should pretty much be at a 90-degree angle throughout the entirety of the throw, right? So when I'm reached back, it's a 90-degree angle. When I hit the power pocket, it's a 90-degree angle, and then when I'm facing forward because I just released the disc, it's still a 90-degree angle. So if you're looking for kind of like the base level drill, you can actually take like a box, like an Amazon box, and like hold it here. Like you make a power pocket and you hold the box there, right? Because that's the position you're wanting to go to. And then you can practice your footwork while the box is forcing you into that position. And so you can practice kind of coiling back without like extending your arm, just kind of coiling back while holding that box, and then kind of swinging through with your footwork. And once that starts to feel pretty good, you can then remove the box, start to do it without the box, and then next would be you without the box, and then maybe you extend the arm, and then you can add a disc into that. And then when you start throwing into the net, what I would do is you take something, some kind of target, like a bag or a cone, and you put it in the back left corner, right? So if I'm facing my target this way, it would be back left. And then every time I reach back before I throw, I'm trying to touch, air quotes, touch that target before I pull through. And then you go slow enough that you don't just automatically revert back to how you've always reached back. And that little bag target trick is actually something you can then, when you're trying to apply this to your throws, you can take it to the course and just put your bag on the back left corner of the tee pad to serve as kind of a reminder.
That's really smart. So would you say that it's better to almost start from a standstill and work on your upper half of your body, or should you focus on the lower half of your body to begin improving one's own form?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I definitely went the route of like, you should do standstills before you add the footwork, which I think if you're just trying to jump on the course day one and have a good time, that's fine. Throw standstills. But if you're actually trying to get to a point where you throw really well, like your standstill throw, I think actually starting with the upper body focus can build some bad habits, because then you start to do things like reach straight back and then your body gets in the way. So if you've got the time and the patience for it and it's worth it to you long term, I think it's actually better to drill the footwork first and then worry about the upper body after that.
Okay. Man, we've kind of gone back and forth on that a little bit. We talk a lot about standing still just to practice, but obviously we're all still learning here. So the benefit there would be you would have your footwork hammered out, and then you could focus on kind of like what we were just talking about, the box drill or something similar, to work on your reach back and then put it all together.
When we're talking about like your reach back and what your upper body's doing, a lot of that's dictated by the position you put your body in with your feet, right?
Right.
So how you reach back with your upper body depends on where your feet are when you finish your footwork. So I guess your feet impact your lower body impacts your upper body, even when you're talking about initiating the throw, right? You're initiating it with your legs and your hips turning first, and then the rest of your body follows, kind of like a whip action.
Yeah, let's explore this further. Let's explore the footwork, I guess. A lot of people at least have the basic idea of what an X step is, but should there be a certain placement that final step is hitting? Is it let's say the upper left-hand corner of the tee box, straight in the middle of the tee box to the right of the tee box? Like, is there a certain position that your foot should be trying to go every single time when you're on the box?
So, no. I'm really glad you asked this question, because the way you aim is with your feet, right? So what if the tee box is not aimed along the line that you want to take, right? So if I'm saying I always run up from the left back to the left front of the tee pad, well, that could be going right into a tree. I think it depends on the hole and the shot that you're trying to throw. So, for example, if I'm trying to throw a hyzer up a hill, I might need to run up a little bit more left to right than I would if it was flat, because the nose is up and the disc is going to want to hyzer early. So it depends on the shot you're trying to throw.
So
follow up to that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Trent. Follow up to that. So a problem that I have, regardless of what the line is, I feel like I always try to hit that top left corner of the box, because I need to get there so I can have as much rotation on my hips and heel and that stuff. That way I can generate more spin, more force in the hips, right? So would it be better, instead of always hitting that corner, I guess instead of running straight, like if I want to end my foot in the middle of the tee box, would it be better to start my body then to the right of the tee box and step on like halfway through, so that way I'm still able to generate that hit power and that spin? Like, does that make sense, kind of what I'm saying?
I think I understand what you're saying. So your footwork should pretty much be the same all the time, right? But where you start and where you end your run-up relative to the tee pad itself depends on the shot you're trying to throw. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so it depends, I guess, depending on where the disc, or where you want the disc to go, or where the basket is, or where the line is, or whatever, that's going to depend on if the pad is straight in front of you and if you need to go to the right, you're going to end up, your body's going to be facing the line you want to go on, right? Is that essentially what you're saying? By your footwork's going to be the exact same, you're just going to change the angle of where you're aiming, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Like if we were to have, say you've got, a fairway and there's kind of a left gap and a right gap, you got to pick a gap. You're not going to start and finish your run up in the same place on the tee pad for either of those shots, right? If you're trying to go the right gap, you're going to start a little more right and you're going to finish a little more right than if you're going for the left gap.
Makes perfect sense. So okay, I like it. I love it. I want some more of it. Okay, sorry, that was stupid. Here we go.
No,
Let's see here.
You nailed it.
This guy.
I'm a little sleep deprived. I'm sorry. Moving on from that part of it, so we've talked a little bit about footwork, upper body. You talked a little bit how your distance before we get into that, you talked about forehand being another thing that you're very good at. What is your pointers for these, like a similar type of conversation that you would have with someone looking to improve their forehand game?
Yeah, so it's the same thing really. With the forehand, I think the most important thing for a forehand, right, is that release. Because you see people who they release it and it kind of wobbles. The difference between a forehand and a backhand is a backhand, you don't have to think about how the disc leaves your hand because it just rips out of your hand. It's different with a forehand. You do actually have to let the disc go and you have to create the snap and create the spin yourself. So I actually advise people to start there and then work their way backwards. So I say it doesn't matter what discs, what speeds, whatever. You take a stack of discs and you go out into your net or into the field or whatever because the disc isn't going that far. And you're just working on this snap, right? Only wrist, maybe a little bit of elbow because you're going to have a little bit of body English, but you're just working on getting a clean release. And when you're able to consistently get that clean release, you start reaching back a little bit further, right? And so we're trying to create lag here with our elbow on our wrist. So the idea is the elbow is going to come in, and then there's the snap. So that's step one is just get the snap. Step two is get a little bit of elbow and get the snap. Step three is a little bit further back and then try to get the snap. And then once you're sufficiently far back enough that you've got a workable sidearm, that's when you can start doing the footwork, which, there's a lot of different ways to do the footwork. The way that I personally teach it and do it myself is when you reach that peak reach back point with your upper body, that's when that front foot, or your left foot in the case of a right-handed thrower, is going to hit the ground, and that initiates the swing forward.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So really, if I'm understanding you correctly, for backhand, you should incorporate everything. You should be incorporating the footwork and the upper body at the same time, where for forehand, you need to get really proficient with that snap and with that release point, and you need to get it to where you're able to have a full, quote, reach back with the forehand before you even think about incorporating footwork, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I would go that extreme. I think you can have a partial reach back and then start incorporating footwork. I can think of players on tour who've done this. I myself have done this because I think what happens is a lot of people, they're able to get that clean snap when they isolate it and they do just the wrist or just a little bit of elbow. And then they start adding the footwork and the full reach back, and all of a sudden it just starts wobbling because they added too many variables at once. The fact is, when you have this, that's a functioning forehand. It just doesn't go very far. So if you want to do the footwork and then just do a limited reach back, that's a very functional shot. That's a very useful shot, and I think it's totally fine to start there. And then, you know, in later sessions, you can start exploring that further reach back.
I have a question on like follow through of the snap. So we've talked a little bit about like, I don't know, I think it's been called holding the pizza or maybe rolling over, like kind of like baseball or softball. What ideally is how should your hand follow through? Should you keep your palm up? Should it just naturally roll over? Like what is, I guess, a good snap follow through on a forehand throw?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so first we'll talk about what you just said is like serving the pizza. So this thing, that's not how you want to throw. You want to throw more like throwing a ball. You want to get this action with your wrist. Granted, it's not going to be this extreme because you're not, you know, unless you're doing like a one finger, it's going to be some kind of hybrid. But the idea is you want to go where there's a fuller range of motion because you're going to get a cleaner release. It's also going to be easier on your elbow. In terms of your follow through, you want to follow through, right? Like if I'm throwing a hyzer, I want to follow through in the direction I just threw the disc. Okay, so I don't necessarily want to, if you roll over after the disc is released, it doesn't really matter, but that's hard to do without rolling the disc over.
Right.
So I say you just want to, like if I'm cocked back in this position, I want to finish on the other side of it, just like that. Almost like you're kind of slapping someone in the face.
Perfect, right. Yeah, that makes sense. No, I was just curious because we've kind of heard all kinds of different things. I might have said the wrong thing once because, like we talked about, we're both still learning here. So thanks for clearing that one up for me. Yeah,
we're all there
for sure. So,
well, I want to take this chance to maybe pivot a little bit out of this conversation to talk about, you know, we've been talking about form and we've been talking about, you know, improving it. And so I think a really good area that I want to talk about is the World Championships. You know, you finished third at the World Championship in Emporia. I was there. I was watching you play, and I was very impressed. And I just want to talk a little bit, you know, about how that was for you. You know, hearing that you'd only been playing disc golf for a couple years, really one of the first times being on tour and the biggest stage, the brightest lights. What was it like playing that final round for the World Championship?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, by the final round, Kristen had it. We can be honest about that. Kristen had it going in that final round. So like my mindset was, you know, given who I am, how long I've been playing, the fact that I was even on that lead card the final round, I was just trying to enjoy it. I was trying to keep a positive attitude, and I was just trying to learn from it because you can't recreate the kind of nerves and the kind of pressure you feel when you've got that stage and all these people watching and people watching at home and like other really good players. You can't recreate that in practice. And so it was just, to me, it was an opportunity to see like, what am I made of in this situation? And then, you know, after the fact, kind of go back and reflect on it and try to improve the next time I'm there. So.
Heck yeah.
Was there any added pressure being a Dynamic Discs player at that Dynamic Disc headquarters, like in Dynamic Discville? Was there any extra added pressure during the tournament for that?
Not really. Yeah, Dynamic Disc doesn't really put a ton. They don't really demand very much of us, of me. They're more of like, we're giving you incentives, but we're not making demands. But there was no like, oh, you better go win it. They were all just stoked that I was doing so well. So.
Gotcha.
Heck yeah. So you said you were kind of just trying to absorb the moment, learn from it, take what you could away from it. So what was one thing that you took away from that final round of how you did play or perform? Yeah,
so I think just like the tournament as a whole and comparing it to the Dynamic Disc Open because they were at the same courses. I don't know if you know this, but DDO was actually my worst finish of the year. So I went from worst finish of the year to best finish of the year. And I think part of that had to do with something I struggle with all year has been out of bounds. I can throw shots really, really well. I can execute all of these shots very, very well in practice. And then you throw an OB line on there and I had some kind of mental block. And so the thing that I was really trying to work through that week was just like, don't be afraid of the OB. You pick. So that was something I took away from it, was like, you need to pick your lines and your game plan with the OB, with the obstacles in mind. But then when it actually comes to game day, you need to not think about them and just execute your shots. Because OB doesn't really change anything, right? Like, there's no reason to go throwing it. I would throw it into the ground because I was scared of going out of bounds, but throwing it in the ground's even worse than going out of bounds because I didn't advance at all. So I guess, that kind of trying to let go of the fear aspect of it and then kind of separate the practice mindset from the execution mindset.
All right, everyone, I want to take a moment to take a pause on this interview. Unfortunately, I do have some bad news. For whatever reason, our recording software failed to capture the rest of this interview. We talked a little bit more about form and distance, and we mainly covered the hot take as well as the ace round. So unfortunately, those will not make this podcast. But to make up for it, I'm going to give you guys the bonus episode for our Patreon members for the remainder of this podcast. You're going to hear a little bit about what mental things you can do even when it's going poorly, how you can improve your disc golf game, as well as some other topics. So you're going to enjoy, hopefully, the remainder of this podcast. And I am going to be looking into maybe changing up our provider for recording because not happy with this. So I do apologize that this has happened. Has not been a problem before. Hopefully it will not be a problem into the future. We do have some amazing guests lined up, so I definitely would like it to not be a problem in the future. So thank you guys for sticking with us. If you've enjoyed, make sure you hit the like button. And if you like the back half of this podcast and you're like, man, I wish I got an extra bonus episode every single week, consider joining us over on Patreon at patreon.com/Chain Clankers. There's some other great perks there. We're getting ready to do a episode with a bunch of our Patreon members as well. So make sure you check that out, and we will see you guys in the bonus.
Welcome into the bonus episode, everybody. We got Holland hanging out with us still tonight. Man, what a good episode that was. Quentin, what'd you think?
Yeah, if you're listening to this, I know you got better at disc golf because I got better at disc golf tonight, and that's good because I got my butt kicked at this last tournament, Holland. I don't know if you've ever had this issue where, one round you're just on top of the world, going back to those B, C, A tiers where you're playing 2 rounds a day. One round you're on top of the world, and the next round you're at the bottom of the barrel, and that seems to be my game right now. So I'm going to ask a very selfish question. How do I stop doing that? How do I stop going from either my first round being probably the worst guy out there and then the second round being the best one, or vice versa? What is something that I should probably be doing differently?
I mean, I guess it depends on why your score is so bad, right? Like, were you just throwing OB when you weren't the other time? Because it could be... could be a mechanical thing. It could be maybe it got windy. There's a lot of reasons you can suck one day and be good the other day.
It's definitely a lot mental. I'll admit that. It's definitely a lot mental.
Is it possible that you shoot the really, really good round, you go on your lunch break, and now you have an expectation that you're going to shoot a really good second round?
So typically this year it has been round 1 is bad. I then go get a Wendy's 4 for 4 and I come back on good vibes. And
it sounds like you need to start your day with a Wendy's 4x4.
Yes.
I think we fixed it.
Yeah, literally. But this last weekend, first round, I wasn't really paying attention. I was just out there with good vibes, and by the time it was over, I was in second place, 1 stroke back. And then I literally could not stop thinking about where I was sitting on the leaderboard, what my score was, and then very first hole, I threw something that was it was a bad shot, but it was very safe, and then skipped probably 70 feet into a river, and it just kind of spiraled out of control from there. It really wasn't. I then took another double bogey on the next hole because I missed a putt going for a birdie, and then got back to it. It was fine. 18 is a 280-foot water carry. I carry the water. It then hits a rock and rolls back into the water. I was under the understanding that because I crossed inbound safely, I would get to take it from where I went out of bounds, easy tap in par, move on. I was then challenged, and instead I had to go to the drop zone, and because I was mad, I threw it in the water again.
Oh,
and
no, I
then, yeah, I was
haven't heard any of this, actually.
very mad when that happened.
I mean, literally everyone has gone through that exact story, and the reason is your mentality in that first round was fantastic. You didn't have expectations, and that's the key. Is kind of like not letting yourself have expectations. That's not the same thing as like having low expectations, because then you're just kind of holding yourself back. But like the way I kind of get out of that is your only goal the whole day has nothing to do with scoreboard. Whether you're doing well, whether you're doing poorly, is like have a good attitude and give every shot your full attention. Right? Because those are two things you can control.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can't even really control where you are on the leaderboard, because that depends on what other people are doing. You can't control stupid things like a rock hitting your disc and pushing it into the water. But you can choose to have a good attitude about it. You can choose to not let that anger that kind of rise up and not give it any oxygen. Just kind of like, I always tell people, is like, you don't have to tell yourself positive things, but if you could just not tell yourself negative things when like shit's hitting the fan, you're already doing better than like 90% of people.
That's very good advice.
I like that.
My Aries rage, sometimes I just cannot control it. And I don't ever take it out on anybody, but I definitely...
Except for when they nice you.
Yeah, I hate those people.
That doesn't do anything, though.
It does.
See,
okay, my
nice
tiny
you're
little brain
sabotaging
thinks
yourself
it does.
there. Yeah, you're sabotaging yourself there. You're giving that
guess
person.
I am.
So now I know if I'm playing you, all I gotta do is every time you throw, say nice, and you're gonna beat yourself.
And I swear to
That's
God,
on you,
if
man.
it's on a good trajectory and then it just 180s, I'm gonna turn around and be like, just don't talk. You can tell me nice after the disc lands. I'm all good with that. But while it's in the air, let's all be quiet. We're at a play right now.
It's funny.
Let
It's
the
very
actors
funny.
act.
All the time. I still mess
You let people mess with you too easy. Here's my question: when you're like practicing, or when you're like warming up your putt and you're missing every putt, do you get onto yourself about it?
So if I'm at a tournament and I'm warming up the putt, I will probably make like the first 20, and then the first one I miss, I'm like, oh, that's not good, and then I miss like 8 in a row, and then walk away, go do something else, and then eventually putt again. So I think almost like once something bad happens, it's like, oh God, how do I get this out of my head now that I know this is a reality?
Right, got you. So here's my tip for you is when you're in that warm-up scenario and you miss a putt, because like newsflash, everybody, even the best putters in the world, miss putts. Everybody knows that. But whatever, it's like, take that opportunity when you miss the putt to practice how you're going to react when something doesn't go your way, because it's going to happen. I don't care how good you are. Something bad's going to happen. So like those little moments when you said you just made the first 20, it's like, clearly you're a good putter if you just made 20 putts. You missed one. That's a good opportunity to practice saying nothing. So don't say anything to yourself. If a thought pops in your head, don't try to like suppress it and force it away. Just like don't give it oxygen. Don't say it out loud. Don't sit there and dwell on it. It'll go away on its own, and you can just go right back to putting.
Yeah, I think that's really good.
You're practicing your responses, and then when it comes time in a round to decide how you're going to respond to something, you've got reps, right? It's just you're getting reps just like anything else.
I think for me, this is my selfish thing. I have a problem, and Quentin and I have talked about it a little bit on the podcast, but I have a problem where, like, if I make my first putt, even if it's a 10-footer or a 25-footer or whatever it might be, if I make my first putt, my round generally seems to be much better than if I cage or miss my first putt. I mean, it's probably going to be the same advice. It's like all mental. What would you say? I mean, it's got to be about the same, right? Like, try not to think about anything and just putt.
Yeah, and I mean, try not to think about anything. Like, don't think about an elephant. What are you thinking about right now, right?
Right.
Like, it's impossible to tell yourself don't think about anything. But I find the closest you can get is to just, like, maybe focus on your breathing. So for me, like, I sometimes short that first putt. And so I try to have, like, almost a rhythm with my, like, Oh, my cat just opened the door. With
good.
exhaling up here, and then inhaling as I bring the putter down, and exhaling as it goes back up. Because usually what happens, right, is you're a little nervous, so you start to get tight. But taking those deep breaths can kind of help you loosen back up and to be a little bit more like how you're putting when you're just practicing, which is nice and loose. And then same thing I was telling Quentin is like you just have to like let the missed putts go. Like they're gonna happen. You can't let them have any kind of hold over you like that. And the first step of that is just don't say anything to yourself when it happens. Just go tap in your next putt, and like you'll find that those like kind of bad like negative thoughts just kind of go away on their own if you don't sit there and dwell on them. But you also don't have to like try to force them away.
Right.
Because I don't know if this happens. I don't know if this happens to you, Trent, but for me, I feel like when that bad thought happens and I almost try to force it away, that is when it just gets so much strength that 3 holes later, I could still be going back to that, and I'm like literally stop talking about that in my head, and it just continues this cycle of like it just will not go away. And
I can't believe you missed that putt talk.
Yeah.
Or that,
Yeah.
I can't believe I hit
like,
that tree.
It's
10
like
feet
when you
off
try to
anything,
reason with a toddler, right?
Right.
You know, like
Oh,
have you
geez.
ever tried to reason with a toddler who's being annoying?
This guy every day.
You can't.
About
Yeah,
an hour ago.
You can't. But the only way to get him to shut up is to ignore him, right?
It's true, yeah. Or distract
So
him
you have
with
to think
something
of
else.
that negativity. It's like a toddler. It's annoying.
That's it.
And it's gonna get the better of you. But if you just like ignore it, let it be, it'll stop sooner.
Ignore it, let it be, or the one that really works with my son is like distracting him with something else. It's like he's dwelling about the phone being off because he's done watching his show. It's like, hey, how about you go color over here? And in the disc golf world, the equation could be, dang, you just smashed a tree 50 feet off the tee pad. Oh, hey, look, now you got an approach shot. Go hit that. Don't worry about it. But it's very hard to do.
It's very hard to do, and I think that's why you got to start looking at how you do what you do in practice,
Your reaction.
and how you talk to yourself in practice and in warm-ups, because that's where it starts, right? You're getting good like mental game reps in,
So I almost
just the same
think,
way you're getting any kind of physical reps in.
Right. I almost think our idea of like when it's going well and we're putting well and we're warming up, and then if it starts to go bad, stopping and doing something else might not be the best way to handle
It's not a
it.
bad idea.
Is it? I don't know. Okay.
I mean,
Maybe I'm
it's
thinking
better than like being negative, right?
Oh, God damn it.
Like literally almost anything is better than just being like, oh, you suck, or God, of course you started missing, or oh, that's just how today is gonna go. It's like, can
Ooh,
you
that's the
imagine
worst
like
one.
deciding your entire day based off of like half a second of something
I hate
happening?
when
It's like,
people say that. They like accept that they're gonna be bad today, off the rip. It's the worst. Man,
It's the worst.
fun stuff. Good talk.
Sorry, I'm
I
just
like it.
processing all that because it does make sense, and I do think that, I mean, that's the difference between being a 900 rated disc golfer and a 960 rated disc golfer. Somebody who's getting 5th at a C tier and somebody who's getting podium finishes at the World Championship, so on and so forth. So I think I have learned a lot. I'm definitely going to take these 10 minutes and I'm going to really think about that, process it, and try to take it to the course.